years and years ago, there was a big spiritual festival in India, and people came from all over to attend. There was one young fellow who was a pretty evolved yogi, walking along with other pilgrims. Because of his dedicated practice, he had a certain special vision to see things. And as he was walking along, he was looking at one other person walking with everyone, but this person seemed funny to him. It didn't seem quite human. So after watching quite a while, he approached this other fellow and said, "Excuse me, I don't mean to bother you, but there's something different about you. You don't seem like a regular person." The fellow answered, said, "No, you're right. I'm Mr. Death. God sent me here to come to this festival and said that I have to take 5,000 lives with cholera." So the yogi thought, well, God's will, these things happen. Must be a good reason. They just went. And these festivals in India, of course, have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, millions even. Like Kumbh Mela, I think last one was 2 million people. But sanitation conditions sometimes aren't so great. Cholera came. And of course, in those situations, if you're with all those people, word spreads quickly. Oh, cholera is breaking out. By the end of the festival, 15,000 people died. And this really surprised the young yogi. Well, you know, if 15,000 people were meant to leave, if it's God's will, why did Mr. Death lie to me? He could have just said 15,000, that would have been accepted by me. So he said, I'm going to look on the way back home, see if I spot that fellow again. And lo and behold, he did. And he approached him. He said, "Excuse me, Mr. Death, I'm really confused. You said God sent you to take 5,000 lives. Yes, son, that's true. But 15,000 died. I said, yeah, that's also true. Then why did you take 15,000 and not 5? He says, no, I only took 5. 5,000 was my job. I took 5,000 with cholera. Well, what had happened to the other 10,000? Why did they die? He said, wasn't me, son. Look over there. And the yogi looked, and it was this kind of small, very odd looking, I always think looks like Gollum. Said, who is that? Looks like almost a demon. He says, yeah, that's Mr. Fear. I took, as Mr. Death, my 5,000. Mr. Fear took the other 10. So he said, I understand. Thank you. I think that describes our state of mind lots these days. We have lots of fear, uncertainty. Media is broadcasting all kinds of things we see all the time. Many people afraid of violence more than ever, at a time when we're the safest we've ever been. Ever. We feel less safe. In reality, we're more safe. That means Mr. Fear is playing with us. And it doesn't matter for many people, even if they hear the statistics. You don't get to fear usually by a logical progression of ideas. It's an emotional thing. So reasonable argument often doesn't help much. And the trouble with fear, the scientists are telling us now, when you have a persistent stimulus of fear, the part of the brain, prefrontal cortex, and the memory sections physically gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Means you can't think well anymore. And the amygdala, which is by the brainstem, they sometimes call it the lizard brain. It's the emotional part. Doesn't think, it reacts, gets bigger and stronger physically. I'm not talking like on a subtle energetic level. The gray matter shrinks, amygdala gets bigger. Amygdala, think of Incredible Hulk, if you know. Incredible Hulk. Right? That's amygdala. And when we react from fear, and we don't have common sense operating strongly anymore, we get into trouble. We start making decisions that aren't sound decisions. A great yogini really helped bring yoga to the West back, I think, in the early 1950s. Maybe some of you have heard of her, Indra Devi. Have you ever heard? She was, I think, stationed mostly in South America. I had the great privilege of hosting her when she came to Yogaville years ago, several times. She was maybe this high. I just remember, she was really, I don't think she wasn't 5 feet. You would have been taller, I think. She was really, she really was, and when I met her, she was 94. She had silken silver hair down to her hips. You didn't normally see that because she kept it tied up in a bun. But because I would have to go to her room and then escort her, I would see her. She was never ready, is the point. I went to her, I knock on the door, and all kinds of things happened. And she was really sprightly and fiery. And she gave several talks at Yogaville. And she always started by saying her words, man plus, God plus fear equals man. God plus fear equals man. Man minus fear equals God. That's how she started every talk. That fear is part of what we call dukkha, a persistent, pervasive feeling of precariousness. And we can't trust life, that we can't control our own destiny. That means even when things are going well, the best we can hope is that the fearful thoughts get a little bit suppressed. But it's there. Carl Jung said it's the background music of our life. Just think of it that way. Background always playing. It's fear of change, it's fear of loss. Always there, like a little mosquito biting you, or better yet, a tick if you've ever actually tick bites. And if you have lots of them, it's like having chiggers. Anybody have chiggers? Ever?
I've had chiggers before.
Right? Yeah, they really get. They're organized. Chiggers organizing as in groups. We used to see them fairly often at Yogaville. Ticks, chiggers, mosquitoes, horseflies, turkey buzzards. What else we had? Snakes. Black widow spiders.
Ooh, those are vicious.
Yeah, rattlesnakes. You could find lots of reasons if you wanted to be nervous. By the way, anybody can. Doesn't matter what you do in your life. You can find plenty of reasons to be afraid. Question is, what good does it do? And a better question even is, can I attain the benefits, whatever they are, of being fearful in a better way? Do you understand? Huh? Fear can alert us, can keep us alert, watchful. It can lead us to making wise choices in life, like, oh, you know, I should start putting money away now, when I'm young, for my retirement, because I'm afraid I'll have nothing. So fear can have a positive aspect. Of course, the fallout's not great. The side effects aren't great. The question is there another way? And of course, you know I'm going to say yes, because I've already I threw shade on fear. Isn't that what I did? Am I saying it right? Yeah, I have to keep up. You guys, young guys, you have to keep me up. There's a bunch of you. And tell me. I don't know, but yeah, I've been throwing shade on fear, giving it a bad name. So it does serve a positive function, but there's actually a way that you can not only replicate the benefits of fear, but far exceed the benefits. No side effects. So we might call that being mindful, awakening. Awakening shouldn't just be thought of like somehow I was defective in a sleep catatonic state. Now I know. Awakening means to be paying attention, to noticing. We don't have to get very metaphysical about it because we'll ruin it. It's just not being complacent. If you want to be mindful, if you want to awaken, the best force for that is your own intention on being in love with life. I assume everyone here's living. We haven't had a zombie here in quite a while. Right? You're here. Think of it. You're here. You're alive. How do you want to look back on your life? Don't you want to be someone who was really having fun? That was engaged? Kind of in the play itself? On one hand, most people would say yes, but if you look how we act, we're not acting that way. We want to be told some things or find some things that we can then use as an excuse to stop thinking, to stop being aware. I know what peace is. You don't know. You fell asleep. If you're saying that, you're asleep. The awake person would say, I don't know. The awake person knows less than you. The Buddha knew nothing. That's why all the wisdom was there. Think of it. If you're having a really intense experience, it could be anything. Maybe you're getting a nice massage. Maybe you're having the world's greatest meal. Imagine the food hits your tongue. It's not like a big thought process. You're not pulling out Descartes and lychee. You're just thinking, wow, strawberries. It's like on a certain level, you become very rudimentary. Like if someone could look at your mind and ask, what are you experiencing now that you're having the strawberry cheesecake? It would just, strawberries. Taste. No philosophy, you're awake. If you order another slice, you're probably asleep. You're not tasting it as much, you're remembering it.
Wow, that's deep.
It's true. That's why I have to be careful of second helpings of anything. Right? People who get involved with something like yoga are some of the worst at falling asleep. They experience a restlessness or a dissatisfaction in their life or feel like they want something more. They come to some classes, learn some techniques, a little bit of philosophy, and then this wonderful voice that will sabotage you over and over will say, now I know. You're fast asleep. You have a bunch of ideas, few experiences linked, and you step back from life. You step back. You have to be in love with life. Not in some kind of bad movie of the week thing, you know, with people jumping around right in the field. But fascinated by its power and its diversity and the lessons you can learn. Amazed by what you see. Just yesterday, this is a true story, amazing experience I had. You won't think it's amazing. I always thought it was amazing. I decided we would have beans for dinner. So I took some nice organic navy beans, I put them in a bowl. That's the secret so far. I put water, and a couple hours later they were bigger. I was stunned. I mean, I know I've done it hundreds of times, but it doesn't stop amazing me. Like, how did that bean know to take in the water? Who told you? I mean, it's not a sponge. That's a chemical reaction. The bean was coming to life. And all it did was sit in a bowl of water. Nobody said, okay, bean, look, this is what you gotta do. The water and the bean just touched each other. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's miraculous. And if that bean stayed on my shelf for 25 years, it would be fine. It'd just be sitting there. It's not like it just grows by itself. It has to touch like its mother. If you can't get excited about beans sprouting, you don't get yoga yet. You gotta think, wow, this is neat. If you take a slice of bread and toast it, it gets brown. That's amazing. The trouble is, that's what I mean about being complacent. Oh, it's toast. That's what it does. This entire planet, I don't know how heavy it is, it's pretty big. It's floating in space. And it's spinning around. And you're upside down at some point all the time. Why aren't you falling off? That should be amazing. That the sun sheds light and it reaches this planet is amazing. That's the enlightened life. Being engaged, being interested, being curious, being involved with the simple things you see around us. Think of having a good life partner or a good friend. That's another miracle. It's a separate human being with millions of thoughts and experiences. And you, with your millions of thoughts and experiences, and you bond. And there's a real living connection. You care for them and they care for you. That's never something to take lightly. That's yoga. Enlightenment isn't about going to heaven, it's finding heaven here. Enlightenment isn't to take you away from life, it's to allow you to participate fully, joyfully, peacefully, without fear. We're so disjointed. Somewhere I read a scientific article. It said if a visitor from another planet were giving samples of DNA, human being, animal, and a tree, they would say, oh, this is all the same family. Clearly, they're the same. They're so much more alike than different. There's only very little difference between us and a tree. DNA is very close. A couple little changes. You could have been an oak tree. And look, you've been changing colors now. People will say how beautiful you are. We think it's all separate. That's what yoga is. That's why my master could truthfully say, and he said it had to be a million times that we would hear it, life is for fun. That's what life is for. So don't worry about all the philosophies, this and that, all these things. When it comes down to it, the bottom line is we're here to have fun. Fun that never ends. To be joyful. And we don't have to worry about ourselves so much. Yeah, do some things, you have to take care of yourself some. Rest well, eat well, exercise well, do all those things. Do you know about, for most people, it's about 16 times a minute, I think it is? You almost die. Every time you exhale, who's saying you're going to inhale again? Right? Are you worried about it? Are you watching? I gotta breathe in. I gotta breathe in. You couldn't do anything else. If you were worried about that, all you'd be doing is watching your breath. So God is compassionate. Said, look, these people have to breathe. You know how it is working with people. If anybody knows what it's like to work with people, it's God. People are unreliable, they don't show up when they say. I've made it that they have to breathe. I can't let them pay attention to this. I'll make it automatic. That's what we call autonomic nervous system, right? You have an autonomic nervous system function. Every time the breath goes out, could be your last one. The fact that God sends the breath in says, I still have something in store for you. Breath is a gift. That means every inhalation means, in a way, you're taking a withdrawal from life. It means you have a debt to pay. The joy comes in serving others. It's kind of stark in a way, this truth. It's a little scary even. The teaching is to live for the sake of others. Lead a dedicated life. You don't live for your sake, you live for others. I know, hearing that years ago with Gurudev, it was beautiful and difficult. Like, a little scary. there's a little part of your mind that says, what about me? Who's going to take care of me? A lot of sentences that end with me come in. On the other hand, we think, wow, that sounds beautiful. But when it comes to do it, it's hard. To live for the sake of others, in truth, is our nature. It's part of having a fearless life. Yeah, you take care of your basic needs. As Gurudev said, you spend a little time every day for your health and peace. Then, he said, share it with everyone. Even if you need to take a rest, it should be for the sake of others. If you go to the movies, for the sake of others. Everything for the sake of others. If you're doing your asanas, pranayama, practices in the morning, not for you, for others. Make yourself more healthy so you can serve more. Give yourself some recreation when needed so you can serve more, serve better. You lose nothing in that life. And it's natural. We have brain cells, neurons, that the scientists are nicknaming mirror neurons. Sometimes called the compassion neuron. You're born hardwired to be compassionate. That means when someone is in need or suffering, you're able to feel that pain. That's what a mirror neuron does. It's what we're built to do. And you see it in nature everywhere. It's amazing what the Mother Nature does in terms of giving. Gurudev would talk always about the apple tree. And he would start with the seed. The seed goes in the ground, then that amazing thing happens, right? And it sends down the taproot first. Then comes the sprout. Then it's a little seedling. Then it's a young tree. And finally, one day, it's big enough. After years and years, it can give apples. And he would say, after all that work, does the apple tree eat its own apples? It just drops them. Apple tree doesn't make apples for itself. It's for the sake of others. When you have a mindset, nothing is for me, nothing is mine, then you end up with this wonderful paradox. Whatever you let go of, you end up having. There is no loss, only gain. I always think, Mother Nature, she wants to give us so much. On every level. But we don't believe it, we don't feel it, maybe haven't been taught that, shown that. So we go through life looking for little crumbs. It's as if our parents, maybe brothers and sisters at the dinner table eating a wonderful meal, but we're underneath, crawling around under the table, waiting for some crumbs to drop. Oh, look, a crumb. So great, I got a crumb. I always wanted a crumb. That's what we call a crummy life. You're just picking a crumb. Maybe one time, a little bigger piece. Wow. That's what we call in our culture maybe a billionaire. Meanwhile, you have parents that have full, not only full table above you, but they own the bakery. You could have anything you want. But no, I'm too afraid. I know my crumbs. You can have the whole loaf. You know, right? That's why we call it the Yoga Loaf Society. It's a wry remark. What? It's a good name for that. We can make all kinds of baking jokes. Then we can make a big campaign and make plenty of dough. Then we'll rise to the occasion. What? No, we just face east and meditate. I'm too old. So, I mean, that's the message is to have some sense of adventure. In some ways, the spiritual life is ideal. In some ways, for two classes of people in general. The ones that are very young, young adults, and the ones that are senior citizens. The ones that are young, some of you have to remember longer back than others, but generally, in our teen years, there's more of a sense of adventure. Right? Even psychologists say people who are teenagers have no real concept of their own mortality. That doesn't really make sense to them. That's why there can be so many, one of the reasons there'd be so many teen suicides. By the way, the other is, you're going to laugh, but I'm not joking, it's chicken. Chicken makes the brain swell. It's been connected to depression, specifically suicidal depression, in a lot of people. So people who are avoiding certain meats to eat a lot of chicken, it turns out that there are chemicals in chicken. This is scientific studies. It actually makes the brain swell. So anyway. I know someone now who's suicidal who's eating chicken every day. Became worse from eating chicken, thinking it's healthy diet. It's a true story. Not story, it's true fact. Anyway, I just said that in case you know someone who's having problems with depression. Pretty easy, just stop eating chicken, see what happens. Maybe it'll get better. I mean, there are other reasons too. But if it's going to make your brain swell, it's not a great thing. More people are sensitive than others. Some people are more sensitive than others. So it's not the same for everyone, but it's pretty extensive.
Guruji, do you think it's the eggs too, or just the chicken?
It's mostly the chicken. Yeah, it doesn't matter how it's cooked or anything. It doesn't matter organic. It's none of those things. It's just there's a chemical in chicken they found that makes the brain swell.
It kind of makes sense. They feed chickens to make their bodies swell, so why wouldn't it make your body?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, anyway, but teenagers don't have a sense of mortality. We may have a sense of chicken, I don't know. But that makes them have a little, I mean, it gets reckless sometimes with teens, but there is a fearlessness. There is an enthusiasm. Right? When you're near the beginning of your life, you're getting into adulthood, it's like, wow, all the things I might be able to do. Then on the other end, you have seniors. They've seen a lot. There's a wisdom that comes from being alive and being at least half awake and knowing what's important. One of the great advantages of aging is that you really can start seeing what's important in life. But harder to change habits when you're older. Younger, more restless, doesn't have the life experience. Older is the opposite. So what we have to do is kind of blend them together. We have the teachings passed on to us. the wisdom. Then we also have the teachings and the practices to help us cultivate enthusiasm, inspiration. To not be afraid to try things. If you're interested in yoga, just jump in. At this point, just jump. See what it has to offer. Play with it. Test it. Try different things. I mean, not everybody can do this at any age, but I was just talking to Johnny today, remembering 1 year, as Guru Purnima, at that time Yogaville was in Connecticut. It was about 4.5 hours from where we lived. Usually, Guru Purnima was a big weekend. We would go Friday at noon. Go up, be there for the evening, then Saturday, Sunday, after lunch Sunday, come home. But 1 year, for some reason, couldn't do that. But we didn't want to miss. The main day is Saturday. So we left at 4 o'clock in the morning. We went up to Connecticut, stayed there for the whole morning program, the big lunch, the afternoon program, evening program. Somewhere around 11 o'clock, maybe it was even midnight, we came home. So we're up about 24 hours. We called it the zip trip. We were up and back. We were tired, but it was great. You can't play everything too safe. Careful, attentive, mindful, fine, but not fearful. A few days after President Reagan was shot, not a few days, I'm sorry, this would have been after he was out of the hospital. The news was reporting all the increased security that he would have for the rest of his life. More armor on the cars and more people around him and limited movements and all of that. And his, Gurudev's reaction was, he said, I couldn't live like that. I'd rather live 1 day free than 100 years like that. Live free. Live free. Nothing can hurt you at your core. Nothing can take that from you. The truth is that you are everything you've ever searched for, and so much more. You are that. You don't need it. You are it. You don't have to grow into anything. You don't have to bring anything in. You just have to see what's already there. How do you see it? A little time every day for your health and peace. Share it with others. Simple life. Every day do something to sharpen the mind a little bit. Some prayer, some meditation, even a few minutes. Makes your prefrontal cortex bigger. It does. You know, there's a spot, 2 spots right here. Prefrontal cortex. Cortex, prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex. About this big. Sections. One side is unhappiness, the other side is happiness. Did you know that? Yeah. They've studied, many studies, meditators, the side of happiness gets really active. Not just when they meditate, all the time. The side that's associated with unhappiness, very quiet. The brain physically changes. Years ago, they thought brain would never change. You know, the word they use is plastic. You know that they use that in medical terms. I mean, it's malleable, changes. Years ago, they said that's it. Once you have a developed brain, no more changes. Now they're finding changes all the time. You have different convolutions in meditators. You know, that's all like wound around looking, the brain. People who meditate is much different. There are more nerve connections between left and right part of the brain. You're using bigger percentage of your brain. When yogis solve problems, more sections of the brain light up, very bright, and they do the studies. They're not thinking that way, they're just saying, oh, what's the problem? And then, woof, all this activity happens. Don't you want a little of that? That's like a superpower. You could be like a superhero, like brain person. Prefrontal cortex man. Why not be that way? As Oliver Hardy said to Stan Laurel, be big, Stanley. Be big. Don't think little for yourself. Don't think, oh, enlightenment is so far. Don't even worry about enlightenment. Don't even worry about it. Just do the needful things. Who said you can't be an enlightened sage, saint in this lifetime? Nobody ever said that I know. Is that what like Moses, Buddha, Jesus taught? Forget about it. Just me. Everybody else, forget about it. It's just the opposite. You are the light of the world, Jesus said. Wow. He didn't say, look, check me out. He was talking to them. Look at you. You're the light of the world. You don't get it. Be perfect, he said. He didn't say become perfect. He didn't say attain perfection. Be perfect. Reside in your own perfection. Be perfect. To abide in what's in you that's already perfect. You read some yoga practice, oh, maybe you read about somebody, oh, they meditated 3 times a day, 2 hours each time. You think, I'm free this weekend, let me check it out. Why not? That's what I did all the time. Hey, let me try. Heard about fasting. Well, try. Then you hear, 3-day fast? Try. 10-day fast? Try. Why? I'm still here. I tried those things. You hear, Shivaratri, come, we have it here, Shivaratri. They stay up all night. Chanting, meditating, telling stories, sharing these wonderful things. I know, we have every year, and it's always like people, I don't know.
That's exactly.
I'll kind of be tired the next day. And I think, so? Fatigue is not your biggest enemy, believe me. You don't have to worry about it. Yeah, you'll be a little sleepy the next day. And you'll have accumulated, meanwhile, probably 1,000 lifetimes worth of good karma by staying up one night. You give one night to God, God gives you all the nights back to you. But that's a great example. Shivaratri, we'll have it, I don't know when it is, February. We've not had the overnight in recent years because most people, I don't know. It's a little strange. Up all night. I don't think I could do it. And I think, well, so what? You fall asleep. We'll put you in the corner, we'll just shove you over, and we'll keep going. We don't. I'm wondering how many might be coming. I'm talking now. Think about it. Think about it. Try it. You don't have to love it, just try it. Try different things. A friend of mine was at a satsang with Gurudev who said, you can cure almost any disease you have by doing 30 minutes of pranayama 3 times a day, every day. That's a pretty good amount. So he did it. Blood pressure normalized, blood sugar normalized, allergies went away, back pain went away, right? And of course, he didn't keep it up. Because that's how, right, habits, we fall back into the old way. But at least he tried it. He knows something special. He knows that works. Don't be afraid to fail. In fact, there really is no failure. Failure is only if you sit in the non-accomplishment of what you thought you should accomplish. But if you learn something, it's no longer failure. You can erase that failure. Well, you don't erase anymore. You delete it, delete failure, and you put in lesson learned. You literally eliminate failure from your life. Literally, there's no more failure. I had the goal, and I did this and this, I was going to do this, didn't happen. Don't feel like failure. Learn a lesson, then it's not a failure anymore. It's a wonderful thing. Don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid of success. It's one of the biggest fears too, right? It gets comfortable sometimes to be a yoga student. You get your little corner, you know where you're going to sit, every satsang same place. Right? I know, I got it together. By the way, just know, if you ever say I got it together, you're in trouble. You've just fallen asleep. That's a deep sleep. Whenever someone says, I got a great balance between my yoga and the rest of my life, wow, not good. That means you don't want to think anymore. Balance between yoga and your life. First of all, there shouldn't be a separation between yoga and the rest of your life. Exempting that for a while. That's a daily thing. What do you mean you got it together? Nothing ever changes in your life? Nothing changes in you? You're saying that you got this balance, meaning saying, I'm done. I'm not going to grow, I'm not going to change. I have a perfect balance. I'd much rather hear, I have a total mess of a life. I'm sure you got it together. It's true, I'm not joking. Do you know what homeostasis is? It's dynamic balance. When I first learned it years ago, when they first invented the human body, they defined homeostasis. Stasis means like doesn't change. It's a terrible phrase. It was defined as this static state. It's the state your body reaches of balance. Then they found out, whoa, are we wrong? Your body's constantly adjusting, adapting, constantly, on thousands of levels, all the time, moment to moment, not second to second, moment to moment. That's what homeostasis is. That sound that just went by, your body had to adapt to it. That's homeostasis. It keeps you within normal operating limits. It's not a static state. That's just, they happen to call it homeostasis, and we're kind of stuck with that. So now a lot of the teachers will say dynamic balance or dynamic harmony, where everything is working together to keep your physical self alive. But it isn't a static state. If you say you got it together, know that you've just fallen asleep. You say nothing is going to change. I'm comfy now. Now let me doze. Do you understand? Does that make sense to you? What I'm saying to you, suggesting, is something more challenging, at least in the beginning, till you get used to it. When you start hearing yourself talk or think like that, you say, whoops. Let me just be open. If you love someone, if you truly love someone, you trust them. And you invite them into your life to help mold your life. You want your life to change because of that person. You're inviting it. You should love your spiritual life the same way. You should invite it in. Dance with it, sing with it, work with it, play with it. It's rich and it's deep and rewarding. It's so much better than saying, from 8 to 9 I do my yoga. No, you do it all the time. Yoga means being mindful, expressing loving kindness in your acts, being present to things. That's what yoga is about. It's about being happy and engaged, fulfilled. It's not about seeing lights and flying around. You might do that. Some people fly around. But then they have to land, the problems are still there. It's to be happy. And not the kind of happiness that's the opposite of unhappiness. Nishla mentioned the peace that passes understanding. This is the happiness that passes understanding. It has no opposite. There's unhappiness and happiness, and then there's this other level. That's what we call kaivalya, freedom, self-realization, enlightenment. And it's right there. It's right there. And it's right in your heart. Heart. So powerful. I think in probably almost every spiritual tradition, the heart is central. In the Hindu scriptures, Upanishads, for one, they talk about your true nature being the size of a thumb in your heart. It gives you some picture, right? Here it is. But like we can, isn't that a good thing? Yeah. You don't think this way. If I said make a thumb by your heart, no one would go this way. Right? You go thumbs up. Something good. There it is. Yourself. Heart, what makes the heart useful is not just the muscly part, which is what we think of. Most of the heart is empty, isn't it? It's chambers. Anybody remember how many? 4. So you got all these little empty spaces. If you didn't have empty spaces, the heart wouldn't do much good. It's not like a bicep. If it was solid, you couldn't pump blood. It has to be empty to receive and to give. That's why the ancients said, this is the home of your soul. Because only something empty could suggest infinite. It's empty. There's no thing in it. And it receives fully and then gives. Not only that, when you watch it, you know the coronary artery goes around. Coronary is like, coronation. That's how it comes, same word, same relationship. So the coronary artery goes around the heart, like a crown. So when the heart receives blood, the first thing it does is it pumps blood to itself. Its job is to give blood to the whole body. But before it does that, it pumps blood to itself. What happens if the blood stops pumping blood to itself? The heart cell stops pumping blood to itself. What do you call that? Heart attack. Right? Not a good thing. You don't live. So the wisdom of the heart is, it knows it has to take something for itself. Here's another neat thing. Heart muscle is different than, you have smooth muscle, like organ kind of things, then you have the striated muscles. They're different kind of muscles, but the heart is different than both. Cardiac muscle is different. And the nervous system is different around the heart. So what the heart does is it pumps, and no other muscle can do what I'm about to say, this next thing. It pumps, and when it releases, just for a moment or two, this is a short thing, it fully relaxes. No other muscle can do that. Just the heart. Pump, wham. Right? Pump, wham. No tension in between. So it could beat 60, 70, 80, 90 more years. That's why it can do it. It does two things. It takes care of itself, then between, boom, relax. How do you relax? Sometimes a relaxation wears us out. We had the residential teacher training, 1 month residential training in Connecticut especially. We'd have people come from all over, maybe 40 people taking the teacher training. And the schedule was a 6-day-a-week schedule. That means Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They got Friday night, half the time off. Right? Saturday, all day, and Saturday night off. I mean work. Sunday was off, usually. In the beginning of the month, people would go usually to Boston or someplace like that, usually Boston, on Sunday, which was, I think, about 2 hours away from the hour and a half, 2 hours from the ashram. So this is what would happen. They'd all get excited, they get in cars together, they carpool, and they go to Boston. And they go to Boston, and it was like an orgy of pizza and ice cream and candies and lots of movies, and they would come back, and then Monday they were dead. And they complained to us. We're tired. I said, well, what did you do Sunday? We relaxed. Yeah, how? Then we hear the stories. By the way, you come to the morning meditation was 5:30. Wake up at 5, meditation 5:30. Monday morning meditation was accompanied by snoring, restlessness, more pain. It's a connection. By the end of the month, Sunday was much more sattvic. You have to know, in that situation, it's a very intense program, what recharges you. You have to be like the heart. Lots of things you might consider fun, and there's nothing wrong with them. But what do you need? What are your needs? In this teacher training, it's intense. A lot of memorization, a lot of practice, everyday meditation. 7 days a week. There was no day off for meditation. Every morning, up at 5, meditation for an hour and 15 minutes, I think it was. Hatha yoga class every morning for an hour and a half. Every morning. Then class all day. From 9 o'clock to 6, hour break, then 7 to 9 at night, every night. So it's fun to go up to Boston, but you come back, you're a wreck. So watch your own self. Look at your day. What is the need of the day that you can at least fairly well predict? Lots of things can come up. What is the need for the day? Look tonight at tomorrow. And say, okay, this is what I need. I better, Sunday's a big day, I better not go too far out. Saturday. So I can serve, let me take a little break. Maybe read a book, maybe listen to some music quietly. Maybe take a walk in nature, all the beautiful colors now. That's yoga too.
Can you tell us about the mudras for the
Mudras. Do you know what mudra means?
I think there's a better meaning.
Yeah, a little bit better. Mudra means to seal. There are two physical practices that have to do with prana, the subtle energy. Bandhas and mudras. Bandha means lock. That's something like when you're doing a pranayama, you take a breath, then a chin lock, you want to hold the breath for a while, you bring the chin in, hold the breath, you've locked it. That concentrates the prana in the torso more. When you concentrate the prana somewhere, you accelerate the benefits, the healing benefits, detoxifying benefits. That's bandhas. So there's usually some physical thing where you're locking. There's an anal lock, there's an abdominal lock, chin lock are the big three. Mudras also have to do with prana, but it's not a lock, it's a seal. It's gentle, and it's a little shifted more to the mental level. of prana, the vital body. And it has to do with this understanding. I'm trying to think how quickly I can say this. It's two levels. One level, if you know, like acupuncture, acupressure, the meridians, sometimes by doing different things, you're connecting different meridians. Right? When you connect them, you get an more intense flow. So this is like large intestine. This is lung. Both large intestine and lung, this is called Chin Mudra, this mudra. Large intestine and lung have to do with relationship to the outside world. It's a lot to it, more than that, but right? Lungs take in outside. The outside comes inside in the lungs. Then stuff that's inside comes out in the large intestine. Right? So they're considered paired organs. Also, they take in, but they also release. So even if you have trouble with emotions that can't be released, like, I don't know if you have in that emotional freedom technique, it's a similar idea. Doing this actually helps you rid yourself of unwanted thoughts and emotions. Because you're strengthening that element in the body that is responsible for letting go. Especially the colon. It has to let go of waste for you to be healthy. And even the lungs, if you don't have a good exhalation, then you have a buildup of carbon dioxide and things. So that's one level, like kind of meridian level. Another level, which is more fun to me in a way, the Japanese call it Sayoshi, which means phantom factor. That's why I like it, because this is called phantom factor and it's very dramatic. Phantom factor means that your body and your mind respond to the shape of space around you. Does that make sense right away or no? This shape, right, flat ceiling, that affects you mentally a certain way. If you walk into a church with a big cathedral ceiling, feels different, right? Isn't immediately like, whoa. Even a house that has a cathedral ceiling, or even a taller ceiling, feels different to you. Our body reacts to the shape of space around us. So far, so good? Right? Now, if I change the shape of my body, I've changed the shape of space. This is one shape of space. This is another shape of space. If I change the shape of space, it affects me mentally and physically in certain ways. And these, the yogis for thousands of years, with that kind of subtle insight, read what these things can do, experienced it, and passed it on. One of the reasons that something like acupuncture works is that, have any of you had acupuncture? Right? You get needles put in, and usually the practitioner goes away for a while. You're laying there with all these needles in you. The shape of your body is now different because of the needles. It's a different shape. Right? There's a lot of other reasons why the needling works. This is one. They act as like little antennas. That's another thing. They stimulate, it depends where you put it. There's a lot of reasons why these points work. But one of them is it changes the shape. By the way, there's a whole school of acupuncture called Toyo-Hari. Nobody heard of it, right? Probably. They don't insert needles. They just put it near the skin, and it still works. We had a practitioner come from Japan once when I was learning. They just, aren't you putting a needle in? No. Well, I don't need to. They just hold it there for a while, put it somewhere else, hold it. It's good, you only need one needle per person. It saves money. The person doesn't feel anything at all, no pinching, and they get better. Point location, very fussy though. Right? That's the exact point. Then they just hold it there. So close. It looks like they might be touching, but they're not. That close. Little antenna, but also changing the shape. So mudras change your shape. Then of course, with the use of them, they have a certain meaning that it carries. which amplifies the benefits. This mudra, usually, it can be either hand, goes either way, but often you'll see right hand up this way. Just held up, palm out. Relaxed palm. That's called Abhaya Mudra. Fearlessness. Abhaya is fear. When you see in front, usually means the opposite. Abhaya, no fear. Fearless. You see that in so many traditions. The Buddhas, Jesus, they don't fear. Think of it like energy flying out of their palm. Palm's very active energetically. Really powerful areas. Palm, soles. So they hold this up. Energy comes shooting out. If it's someone like a Jesus, it's really, right, or a Buddha, it's a real strong beam, like a laser, right? Abhaya. But we would need a little more, want a little more from our deities, so we can also add Varaha, or Varaha Mudra. This is boon granting. Don't fear, I'll give you everything you need. Sometimes you'll see, often you'll see, if you look at images of in Hinduism, of the goddess Lakshmi, she has her hand down like this, and they depict it as coins flying out of her hand.
Can you do that? Can you make coins fly?
How do you think we pay the rent? Well, actually, we could use a little more. Ring a few, like a couple of nickels come at the end. Yeah, right? You could also, the other thing is, there's another subtle teaching. Granting boons, but look where it's pointing. The deity's pointing to her or his feet. Means, come to me, you'll get what you need. Your boons will be granted. Fear not, you get everything you need. So the combination of the two, which you see sometimes in some deities, is very powerful. So when we see that mudra, we think of that, we're reminded of that. There's nothing to fear. I get all the boons I need.